Hi, my name is Riven Phoenix and welcome to Blender Character Rigging for Beginners series. So this is volume 2. In volume 1, it was Blender Character Modeling for Beginners series, where I took you through a step-by-step process using a formula-based system to create this realistic version of the human figure without using any reference. So the idea here in this volume is that we want to be able to now take this character to its next level. We want to be able to pose and animate this character in any way that we want. And the other requirement is that we want this character to have realistic human figure movements when we are posing it. So the way we can do this is by using Blender's very powerful rigging system. So basically what a rigging system is, it's simply a collection of bones that you can create and place inside your 3D model. So for this character, we would be creating bones such as the head bone, the neck bone, the bones for the torso, abs, hips, all the way down to the fingers. And if we want to animate his jaw, where we can open and close his mouth, we would need to create a jawbone. If we need to animate his tongue, we would need to create bones for the tongue. And of course, if we want to animate his eyes, we would need to create bones for the eyes. So whatever you want to animate on your character, you can simply create bones for that area. So after you place the bones inside your character, then you can simply select the vertices that define these different areas and assign them to these bones. So when you move the bones, the vertices will simply move along with them. Now, the cool thing about Blender is that you can actually just tell Blender to automatically assign the vertices that are surrounding these individual bones. So as an example, we can take the head bone and tell Blender to find all the vertices that define the human head and assign them to the head bone. So when we move the head bone, the entire human head will move. So the thing to understand about rigging is that you can have two different types of bones. The first type are going to be deform bones. These are the bones that we're going to place inside our figure. So if we want to move the human head, we would create a head bone and mark it as a deform bone. The other types of bones you can have are non-deform bones. These bones can be used to drive your original deform bones, meaning that you can use these non-deform bones to create from very simple to very complex rigging systems to give you realistic human figure movements. So you can use bones to rig anything that you want in Blender. It does not have to be a biped model like this. It can be a quadruped, it can be a car wheel, or it can be a simple door. You simply need to know that if you want to use Blender's bone rigging system, you simply have to either assign the vertices to these bones, or you can simply take the actual object and make it a child of the bones. So wherever the bone moves, the object will follow. So we're going to be taking a look at rigging in quite a bit of detail in these lessons. So to help you understand what is it that we're going to be doing, here I'm just going to jump into the future and explain this. So the first thing that we're going to do is again create and place the bones inside our figure, just like this. We're going to be creating a total of 80 bones. That's 80. And if you look over here, you can see that these are the number of bones. And these bones are going to give us the ability to create realistic human figure movements. So if I rotate this figure, you can see how we are going to strategically place these bones inside the figure. Then we can come in here and tell Blender to take the vertices that are near these bones and simply assign them. So as an example, we can take the vertices that define this human head and assign them to the head bone. So when we rotate the head bone, the entire human head will start to move. So as I said, you can have two types of bones. This head bone would be a deform bone, meaning that the vertices that are going to be assigned to this bone are really just deforming. And all it's really doing is giving you the illusion that you're moving the head. So this is how rigging works in a nutshell. At its core, you can look at it this way. If you want to animate things on your character, you simply need to create a bone for it and assign those vertices to it. So if you wanted to animate this ear, you would create a single bone or several bones and assign the vertices that define this ear to these bones. So when you move the ear bones, the ear will start to animate. So here I'm just going to zoom in. So here if you look, you'll see that we can take the vertices that define this eye and assign them to the eye bone. So when we rotate the eye bone, the eye will move. But when it comes to the eyes, you actually have two different options. You can either take the vertices and assign them to the eye bone, which we are going to do, or you can simply separate the eyes as a separate object and just make it a child of this bone, using parent-child relationship concepts. Regardless, wherever you do to this bone, the eye will follow. Now, if we take a look at this bone over here, which will be used to animate the jaw, you can see that when we are going to rotate it, we can make the mouth open and close. So here you can see that we can pick and choose which vertices are going to get to follow this jawbone to give us the ability to create these realistic human figure movements. We can also do the same thing for the tongue. So if we look at this from the front, you can see that we can animate the tongue. So this is going to be true for all the bones on this figure. Each bone that you're looking at here is going to be assigned to these vertices. So if I click on the shoulder, you can see that we can move the shoulder. This is to move the arm. This is to move the forearm. And of course, this is to move the hand. And if I just zoom in on the hand, you can see that we're going to have palm bones. We're going to have bones for the fingers. And over here, if I click on this bone, the vertices that are going to define this area of the torso are going to be assigned to this bone. Now notice that when I move this bone, not only are we going to get to oppose the torso, but all the bones that define the hand, the arms, the shoulders, the neck, head, jaw, tongue, eyes are all moving with this bone. This again has to do with parent-child relationship concepts. So if you want to understand how rigging works in Blender, we're going to have to understand in detail how parent-child relationship concepts work in Blender. Now notice that just by having these bones, we can create very realistic human figure movements. And over here for the leg, when I move this, you can see that we can control how this entire hip section is going to work. So if I go to the right view, we can pick and choose how the vertices will behave to give us these nice realistic movements for the hip area. So as you can see that when we place these bones, it gives us the ability to create realistic human figure movements. But the thing about this rig is that we're having to click 80 different bones to animate this character. So this is where we are going to use additional bones. These are the bones that are going to be non-deform bones to create from very simple to very sophisticated rigging systems. Basically, we're going to add additional bones to drive these deform bones to simplify the process for us. So if I click on this bone and rotate this, you can see that the head is stuck to wherever this bone moves. So if I want to keep the head still, I have to do it manually. So we can automate this process. So after we have gone through this step, we're then going to take the rigging system to its next level. So over here are our original 80 bones. You can see that they appear green. This is because we're now going to start to use the additional bones to drive these bones. So here I'm just going to show you what that's going to look like. So these are the additional bones that we're going to be creating. So if I just select these, you can see that there are a total of 129 bones. Now these are not deformed bones. They're basically mechanical bones. They're here to help us create a very sophisticated rigging system that will give us realistic human figure movements. And then to drive these bones, we can simplify it and bring the number down to just these bones. So these are going to be our touch bones. Okay. So here, let me just go back to the head and show you what's going on. So over here, if I want to animate the head, I can simply click over here on this bone. Notice that bones can have special shapes. See, if I check this off, it's just a bone that you've seen. So when I rotate this head, you'll notice that the neck over here is moving just a little bit. This is because we're automating that process. We only have to click on the head. And if I zoom out over here and click on his chest bone, now notice how the head behaves. The head stays perfectly still. And this is only possible by creating these or using these mechanical bones. So here, if I turn this on, you can see how this is working internally. If I click on this, you'll see that how it automatically adjusts the human head. So we don't have to think about counter animation. And if you look at this from the front, you can actually see this a lot better. So if I click on the chest, you'll see that the head stays perfectly vertical. So now that we can create sophisticated systems like this, we can add additional functionality to them. So if I click on the head bone, I can actually tell the head to simply just follow the chest like before by simply clicking over here and turning it on. So now when I click on this, you will see that now the head is behaving like it was before with our original 80 bones. So now I'm just going to go ahead and reset this. So now if I click on this head and rotate it, you can see that the neck is kind of following it. So here we can tell the neck to fully follow the head. So now when I rotate the head, the neck is now fully following wherever the head goes. Here is from the front. And if I turn that off, you can see how the neck is behaving. So it's going to be these little features that we can add to our rig to give us these realistic human figure movements. So here I'm just going to zoom in on the eyes. So in order to move both of these eyes, we can create an eye control. So let me just zoom out and show you what this looks like. So here you can see when I move this control how the eyes are following wherever this control goes. We can also rotate the eyes individually. Now if I zoom out and go to the right view, notice that when I click on the head, how this eye target follows the head. So we can tell the eyes not to do that. We can simply turn off this feature and now take this eye target and move it anywhere that we want. So wherever we move this, you'll notice that both eyes are always looking at that eye target. So this is a very useful feature when you want to make your character look at something and animate it. So it doesn't matter where I move it. Over here, you can see that the eyes are always going to be looking at that target. So let me go ahead and just turn it back on over here. So over here on the area for the abs, we can add an additional feature where we can make him have this type of a movement, kind of like a belly dancer movement. So this again is not possible if we just use our original 80 bones. We would have to create a system that internally does this for us. Now the other feature we can add is that if we click on this chest and rotate it, you can see that both arms are following. We can tell the arms to not do that. We can turn them off. Now both arms are going to simulate the joint system here more naturally, like it does in real life. Or we can just simply tell the arms to stick to the chest. And of course, it's the same thing. You can click on this and animate the shoulders. Now, if I click on the hips over here, go to the right view, you can see that now we can control how the hips will move to give it a swing. We can also control where this pivot point is. So now when I swing the character, you'll see that the head and the upper chest stay perfectly still. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to continue on in the next lesson and show you some additional features that we're going to be creating for our rig. Thank you.